What if I told you that there's one technique, just one, that instantly makes you stand out to women without saying a word? No flashy cars, no cheesy pickup lines, just presence. And once you master it, every woman in the room will notice you and remember you. When a man walks into a room, women don't notice the price of his shoes first. They don't immediately assess the brand of his watch or how expensive his haircut looks. What captures attention before any of those things is presence. That intangible force that announces, "I'm here," without a single word spoken. Presence is a man's silent signature. It's not something you wear, it's something you embody. And here's the powerful truth. While appearance fades and fashion changes, presence remains unforgettable. Women respond to energy before they even register looks, and that energy either draws them in or pushes them away. Commanding presence is about how you carry yourself, not what you carry on you. Think about the man who walks slowly, confidently, shoulders back, chin slightly up, taking deliberate steps. He's not rushing. He's not slouching. He doesn't shrink himself to fit in. He takes up space without being arrogant and without needing to dominate anyone. There's a groundedness in the way he moves, an inner stillness that's hard to ignore. That man might not be the most traditionally handsome in the room, but he will always be the one people remember. Why? Because presence is primal. Long before we speak, we assess danger, leadership, warmth, and authority based on how someone shows up physically and energetically. Let's take a real-world example. Think about actors like Idris Elba or Mahershala Ali. Yes, they're attractive, but their magnetism comes more from their energy than just their faces. They walk with intention. They speak with clarity. There's a calmness in their eyes and a slowness in their movements that says, "I'm in control." That's what presence looks like. And guess what? That quality is completely learnable. It's not about being a celebrity. It's about being conscious of the signals you're sending before you say anything. Most men are taught to focus on improving how they look, clothes, muscles, grooming, but few are taught to develop how they enter. The difference is striking. A man who walks in with awareness of his body, who understands how to manage his breathing, posture, eye contact, and emotional energy, automatically raises the temperature in the room. It's not about being aggressive or dominant. It's about being centered. Presence says, "I don't need to be the loudest to be heard." And that's incredibly attractive to emotionally intelligent women. And here's the nuance. Commanding presence isn't loud, flashy, or boastful. It's quiet. It's composed. It's confident without saying, "Look at me." In fact, true presence is when people look at you without you asking for their attention. Women, in particular, are highly attuned to nonverbal communication. They'll notice the man who doesn't fidget, doesn't check his phone every 2 seconds, doesn't feel the need to dominate every conversation. They'll pick up on the man who listens with his full body, who stands still when others are restless, who looks them in the eye not to impress, but to connect. That's the man who feels safe, stable, and in control. 3 qualities that send powerful signals to a woman's subconscious. To build this kind of presence, a man needs to get in touch with his body awareness and emotional regulation. Start by noticing how you walk into spaces. Do you lead with your chest or your phone? Are your shoulders up near your ears from stress, or relaxed and low? Are you rushing through doors, or moving with intentionality? Presence is developed through micro decisions. How you sit, how you breathe, how you speak. Even the tone and pacing of your voice plays a role. A slower, deliberate tone is more commanding than fast, nervous chatter. A slight pause before speaking communicates thoughtfulness and self-assurance. These are subtle shifts that change everything. Women don't want to be around men who constantly seek validation. That kind of energy is repelling. But the man who walks into a room like he belongs, without needing permission, applause, or performance, is the one who commands attention without begging for it. He becomes the emotional anchor in the room. And in a world full of noise, distraction, and performative masculinity, A man who exudes quiet, grounded strength is like a rare gem. He's felt before he's seen. He's remembered after he's gone. And the best part? He didn't say a word. One of the most underrated yet most powerful techniques a man can possess, especially when it comes to presence, influence, and attraction, is emotional control. Emotional control doesn't mean suppressing your feelings or pretending things don't affect you. It's about understanding, regulating, and owning your emotional responses in a way that communicates maturity, stability, and strength. For women, especially emotionally intelligent, self-aware women, nothing is more noticeable than a man who knows how to hold himself together when things around him start to fall apart. In a world where emotional reactivity is common and impulsiveness is glorified, a man who can remain calm, self-possessed, and clear-headed under pressure stands out instantly. Emotional control is attractive because it signals safety. A woman might not be able to explain it logically, but she will feel it intuitively. I can trust this man with my emotions because he can handle his own. It's not about being emotionally detached. It's about being emotionally disciplined. And that distinction matters. A man who has mastered emotional control is not numb. He still feels everything: anger, disappointment, frustration, excitement, even fear, but he doesn't let those emotions dictate his behavior in a destructive or immature way. He doesn't lash out, shut down, or lose his temper just because things aren't going his way. Instead, he recognizes the emotion, processes it internally, and responds rather than reacts. That kind of emotional self-regulation is not just powerful, it's rare. Take, for example, a situation where a woman tests a man emotionally, maybe by pulling away during an argument or making a provocative statement to see how he reacts. Many men, in this moment, fall into one of two traps. They either become defensive and lash out, or they shut down and retreat completely. But the man who has mastered emotional control will do something else entirely. He will pause. He'll take a breath. He'll ask himself, is this about me, or is this a reflection of something she's going through? Instead of personalizing the situation, he'll observe it. He might calmly say, I can tell something's off. I'm not here to fight, but I am open to talking when you're ready. That's power, that's leadership, that's emotional sovereignty. And that instantly shifts the dynamic from conflict to connection, from chaos to clarity. Emotional control also plays a major role in attraction because it creates polarity. Women, generally speaking, are more emotionally expressive. That's not a flaw. It's a strength that fuels connection and empathy. But when a woman is in her emotional flow, she doesn't want to be met with more volatility. She wants to be met with groundedness. A man who can hold space for a woman when she's overwhelmed, anxious, or venting, not by fixing it, not by matching her intensity, but by staying solid in himself, is a man she will feel magnetically drawn to. Emotional control is what allows a man to be the rock in the emotional storm. And women don't just notice that, they remember it. In dating and relationships, emotional control is often what separates high-value men from the rest. Picture a scenario where you're on a date and something goes wrong. The restaurant messes up your reservation, the server is rude, or the food takes an hour to arrive. How a man handles that moment says more about him than any line he could ever say. The man who gets visibly irritated, snaps at the staff, or starts complaining loudly sends a very clear message: I'm easily thrown off course. But the man who keeps his cool, maybe even laughs it off, reassures his date, and pivots with ease communicates something much deeper. Nothing can break my stride. That man is remembered not because of the problem, but because of the way he handled it. His calm confidence under stress becomes the very thing that draws people toward him, especially women. There's also a subtle power in emotional control when it comes to how a man deals with rejection, disagreement, or emotional discomfort. Most women can tell within minutes of talking to a man how he handles adversity. Does he take responsibility for his own triggers? Does he blame others? Is he able to sit with difficult emotions, or does he rush to escape them through distraction, denial, or blame. Emotional maturity is something women can sense long before the man even opens his mouth. It shows in his tone, his timing, his patience. A man who doesn't panic when things get awkward, who doesn't try to force connection or overcompensate with ego, who is simply okay being uncomfortable, that man radiates strength. Emotional control isn't about pretending things don't affect you. It's about showing that you can be affected and still remain composed. Even in moments of vulnerability, a man with emotional control doesn't fear being open. He doesn't overshare to seek validation, nor does he bottle everything up out of fear of seeming weak. Instead, he shares selectively with intention, not to manipulate, but to connect. That controlled vulnerability is attractive because it shows depth and direction. Women don't want perfection. They want presence. They want to feel like they can express themselves freely with a man who won't fall apart the moment things get real. That's what emotional control makes possible. Authentic eye contact is one of the most subtle yet powerful tools a man can use to instantly command attention, create trust, and build connection. It's not just about looking someone in the eye, it's about how you do it, the energy behind it, and the intention it carries. Women, in particular, are highly sensitive to this nuance. They can immediately sense whether your gaze is confident or insecure, whether it's coming from a place of presence or performance, and whether it's grounded in connection or control. The difference between a man who stares with intimidation and one who gazes with intention is everything. Authentic eye contact is not about dominance. It's about being fully present. It says, "I see you. I'm here with you. I'm not hiding and I'm not chasing. I'm simply being." And that kind of energy is both calming and captivating. In many ways, the eyes are the first language we speak. Before a single word is exchanged, before any gestures are made, eye contact initiates an energetic conversation. And when done right, it speaks volumes. The man who knows how to use eye contact authentically doesn't need to overtalk, brag, or act overly confident. His gaze already communicates his value. He's not seeking approval. He's offering presence. When he looks at someone, especially a woman, there's no rush, no pressure, no fear. There's simply attentiveness. And that attentiveness is magnetic. It makes a woman feel seen, not scanned. It makes her feel acknowledged, not objectified, and it creates a subtle tension that says, "You have my attention, and I'm not afraid to hold it." Now, let's address the difference between creepy and confident eye contact, because this is where many men go wrong. Creepy eye contact often comes from overcompensation, when a man is trying too hard to appear confident. It feels forced, unblinking, and almost invasive. It's the kind of gaze that says, "I need you to respond a certain way to validate me." On the other hand, confident eye contact comes from a place of self-trust. It's relaxed, balanced, and emotionally attuned. It's not about staring someone down or winning a staring contest. It's about being connected to yourself first, so that when you meet someone's eyes, you're bringing your whole self into that moment, not your insecurities, not your fantasies, not your performance, just your presence. Think about a man who walks into a room and takes a moment to observe before engaging. He scans the space calmly, not with hunger, but with awareness. When he locks eyes with someone, he doesn't dart his gaze away nervously, nor does he overhold eye contact to assert power. Instead, he maintains it just long enough to create a sense of curiosity, and then he softens it or looks away naturally. That balance between interest and ease is what makes his gaze feel authentic. He doesn't need to prove anything with it. That's the essence of power, effortlessness backed by intention. In one-on-one conversation, authentic eye contact becomes even more impactful. For example, when a woman is speaking and a man maintains gentle, steady eye contact, not to interrupt her, not to judge her, but to really listen, that moment becomes emotionally intimate. He's not looking at her lips, not distracted by his phone, not waiting for his turn to speak. He's simply witnessing her, and that kind of presence is incredibly rare. It makes her feel valued, not just heard. It creates a sense of emotional safety that many women crave but rarely find. She walks away from that interaction thinking, there was something about the way he looked at me. He was really there. Authentic eye contact also applies when a man is speaking. If he can look someone in the eye while telling his story, expressing a boundary, or sharing an opinion without flinching or retreating, it shows congruence. It shows that his words are aligned with his beliefs. And that alignment is powerful. When a man avoids eye contact while speaking, it often signals doubt or insecurity, even if what he's saying is strong. But when his eyes match the energy of his words, everything lands deeper. His truth resonates because it's not just being said, it's being felt through his presence. Even in romantic or flirtatious settings, authentic eye contact can say everything that words cannot. A man who can lock eyes with a woman across a room, hold that gaze with a hint of a smile, and then casually look away, sends a much stronger signal than a man who tries to be loud or flashy. That quiet moment of acknowledgement can spark chemistry because it's intimate without being invasive. It's the kind of look that lingers, not because it was intense, but because it was real. And in more vulnerable moments, like when a man opens up emotionally or receives someone else's vulnerability, his ability to maintain soft, steady eye contact communicates emotional availability. He's not afraid of feelings. He's not retreating into distraction. He's staying with the person in front of him. That kind of eye contact builds trust. It builds intimacy. It builds the unspoken connection that many relationships are built upon. Authentic eye contact isn't just about being seen. It's about seeing back with presence, with empathy, and with grounded confidence. Body awareness is one of the most overlooked aspects of masculine power, yet it's constantly communicating who a man is without him saying a single word. Long before you open your mouth, your body has already introduced you. How you stand, how you breathe, how you move, how much space you take up, and how much tension you carry all speak volumes about your internal world. Body awareness is not just about posture or fitness. It's about how conscious you are of the signals your body is sending in every interaction. When a man has mastered his body language, he doesn't need to overcompensate with bravado or try to prove anything. He simply becomes magnetic through presence. Women are incredibly intuitive when it comes to body language. They pick up on your subtle shifts, your hesitations, your confidence, your insecurity, your intentions, all through the way you carry yourself. A man who is aware of his body moves with deliberate intention. He doesn't rush or fidget. His steps are grounded. His posture is upright but relaxed, and there's a stillness in his presence that tells others, I'm in control of myself. He doesn't slouch to hide, nor does he puff up to intimidate. Instead, he owns his space. He stands in alignment, shoulders back, chest open, eyes forward, not to be seen, but because he is connected to himself. That connection is felt by everyone around him. A woman might not consciously register every detail, but she'll feel that this man is different. There's a grounded quality in his body, a quiet certainty that draws attention without seeking it. Consider the contrast. A man who lacks body awareness will often appear anxious or disconnected. He might shuffle his feet, avoid standing still, slump his shoulders, cross his arms too tightly, or gesture nervously. These are all signs of a man who isn't present in his body. He's either lost in thought, consumed by social anxiety, or overthinking how he's being perceived. Women feel that too. They can sense when a man's body is in the room, but his energy is somewhere else. And that disconnection instantly lowers attraction, because if a man can't be at home in his own body, how can he hold space for someone else? One of the clearest examples of powerful body awareness is how a man handles silence. Most people are uncomfortable with silence, especially in social or romantic contexts. They fidget, fill the space with meaningless chatter, or reach for their phone. But a man who is truly in tune with his body can hold silence like a canvas. He doesn't panic in the stillness. He breathes into it. He stays rooted, calm, maybe even makes eye contact, and lets the moment breathe. That is an incredibly strong form of communication. It says, I am comfortable with myself. I don't need to perform. I don't need to impress. I'm just here. And that calm assurance delivered through his physical stillness speaks louder than any line or compliment. Take an example from the world of performance or leadership. Think of someone like Keanu Reeves or Jason Momoa, men who often say very little in interviews, but whose physical presence fills the entire room. They don't over-gesture. They're not theatrical. They simply are. The way they sit, the way they enter a space, the way they keep their body language open and relaxed. It all creates an energy of control, humility, and quiet power. That's what body awareness looks like in action. It's not about being stiff or robotic. It's about having control over your energy and knowing how to express confidence through economy of movement. Even in intimate situations, body awareness transforms the dynamic. A man who is aware of how close he stands, how gently or firmly he touches, how fast or slow he breathes in sync with his partner, creates a deeper, more conscious connection. He's not just doing things, he's feeling them. He's attuned not only to his own body, but also to hers. This makes him more responsive, more present, and more trustworthy. Women instinctively trust men who are physically grounded because it signals safety, emotional control, and attentiveness. And this doesn't just apply to romantic settings. It applies to leadership, friendships, family dynamics, and every area where trust and respect are currency. Learning to develop body awareness starts with observation. Watch how you sit. Notice how you walk into a room. Are you shrinking or standing tall? Are you moving reactively or with calm purpose? Practice slowing your movements, especially in high-pressure situations. Consciously lower your shoulders, relax your jaw, uncross your arms, and take deeper breaths. These small shifts recalibrate your nervous system and immediately project more confidence. Over time, these habits become second nature, and your body becomes an anchor of calm instead of a vessel of unconscious tension. Women remember how a man makes them feel in his presence, and the way you move, stand, breathe, and react shapes that emotional experience more than anything you say. Body awareness allows a man to communicate trustworthiness, emotional maturity, and calm strength without ever having to speak. It's an unspoken language that connects deeply to the nervous system, and when mastered, it becomes a man's most powerful form of communication. Purpose-driven communication is a cornerstone of masculine influence that separates men who simply talk from those who truly lead. It's not just about what you say, it's about why you're saying it, how intentionally it's delivered, and what emotional impact it leaves behind. A man who speaks with purpose isn't driven by a need for validation or a desire to impress. He speaks to create clarity, build understanding, set direction, or inspire action. His words are not wasted. He doesn't over-explain, overshare, or seek permission through his language. Instead, he communicates with clarity, conviction, and restraint. This kind of communication immediately signals value. It shows that the man is not only confident in what he believes, but also deeply aware of his audience and the emotional tone of the moment. Women, in particular, pick up on this immediately. They sense when a man is speaking with direction versus when he's just filling space with noise. Purpose-driven communication is not about being dominant or controlling the conversation. It's about being aligned. Every word has weight because it's coming from a place of inner certainty. A man who knows his values, who has done the internal work of understanding who he is and what he stands for, doesn't need to talk excessively to make a point. He can say less and still leave a lasting impression. That's because his tone, his timing, and his energy all match the message. He's not trying to say something clever, he's expressing something clear. That clarity is magnetic. It allows the listener, especially a woman, to relax because she doesn't have to decode or second guess what he really means. His words feel safe, direct, and clean. And one of the most common ways men fail in communication, especially in romantic or emotionally charged contexts, is by speaking reactively instead of intentionally. For example, if a woman expresses disappointment or questions a man's intentions, many men feel the urge to defend themselves, prove a point, or say something just to diffuse the tension. But a man who's rooted in purpose doesn't chase the moment. He doesn't try to win the argument or dodge discomfort. He listens, he pauses, he filters his response through emotional maturity, not ego. And when he does speak, he's not trying to be right. He's trying to be real. That kind of response immediately de-escalates conflict and builds trust. It's a powerful way to show emotional leadership through language. Imagine a situation where a man needs to express a boundary. Maybe he feels like his time isn't being respected, or a dynamic in a relationship feels one-sided. A reactive man might complain, accuse, or drop hints in frustration. But a man who practices purpose-driven communication will approach the situation with clarity and calm. He might say, "I value spending time together, but I also need to protect my space. I'd love for us to find a rhythm that works for both of us." That statement isn't aggressive. It's not defensive. It's directed, and it immediately sets a tone of mutual respect. That's what makes purpose-driven communication so effective. It's not about creating winners and losers. It's about creating alignment. Purposeful communicators are also exceptional at using silence and timing. They don't rush into conversations just to fill the air. They understand that sometimes saying less is saying more. A pause before responding. A moment of silence after a powerful statement. These aren't manipulations, they are conscious choices. A man who communicates with purpose knows that energy is transmitted not only through his words, but also through the space between them. He trusts that what needs to be heard will be heard if it's said with enough clarity, presence, and intent. This restraint and timing show maturity, and women especially are drawn to men who don't feel the need to speak just to prove they exist. Another layer of purpose-driven communication is emotional honesty. This isn't about being overly vulnerable or sharing your every thought. It's about speaking from a place of truth. When a man can say, "That made me uncomfortable," or "I don't have the answer yet, but I'm thinking about it," or even, "I'm not okay with that," without anger or apology, he reveals his integrity. His truth becomes an anchor, not a weapon. And women feel that. They feel safe with a man whose words are guided by intention rather than impulse. Because when a man speaks honestly and with purpose, his message is clean. There's no emotional manipulation, no guilt tripping, no games, just direction. Purpose-driven communication also shows up in how a man asks questions. Instead of making conversation for the sake of small talk or trying to sound interesting, he listens deeply and then asks questions that reflect genuine curiosity. He doesn't just ask what someone does for a living. He asks what they love about it. He doesn't ask surface-level questions. He digs into values, dreams, beliefs. These aren't scripted or performative questions. They come from presence, from being in the moment. And that presence transforms even casual conversations into emotionally memorable experiences. In all areas of life, whether in business, relationships, leadership, or personal growth, a man's ability to communicate with purpose will determine the quality of his connections. People don't just respond to what you say, they respond to why they believe you're saying it. If your communication is loaded with insecurity, validation seeking, or confusion, it will always be felt before it's understood. But when your communication is grounded in clarity, aligned with your values, and delivered with calm conviction, you stand out. Not because you're loud, but because you're clear. And clarity, in a world full of noise, is power. A man with confidence might turn heads when he walks into a room, but a man with standards is the one who keeps respect long after the first impression fades. Confidence without standards is often mistaken for charisma or charm, but it can quickly dissolve into arrogance, inconsistency, or even desperation when put to the test. Standards, on the other hand, are the backbone of a man's identity. They are the internal boundaries he holds for himself, how he allows others to treat him, how he shows up in his relationships, what he will and won't tolerate, and what kind of energy he allows into his life. Women don't just notice this, they feel it. They can instantly detect whether a man is operating from a core of self-respect, or whether he's simply performing confidence for attention, affection, or approval. A man who has standards doesn't try to impress everyone. He's not interested in being liked by everyone in the room because he's too busy making sure he respects the person he's becoming. This kind of man chooses who he allows into his circle with care, and he does it without apology. He's not judgmental, but he is discerning. He knows what aligns with his values, what disrupts his peace, and what brings out the best or worst in him. For example, if a woman flirts with him in a way that's playful but subtly disrespectful, a man with only confidence might play along to keep her interest, afraid of being seen as too serious. But a man with standards will calmly disengage or redirect the energy. He doesn't confuse attention with value. He knows that not all interest is worth entertaining, and he doesn't compromise his standards just to avoid discomfort or be liked. In romantic relationships, having standards changes everything. Many men chase validation, constantly adjusting who they are depending on the woman in front of them. They become overly agreeable, too accommodating, or emotionally inconsistent because they fear rejection. But when a man has standards, he communicates his worth without needing to say much. He doesn't chase women. He attracts them by staying rooted in what he knows he deserves and what he's willing to offer. If a woman tests him by being late consistently, pushing boundaries, or showing emotional immaturity, he doesn't beg, explain, or overreact. He simply steps back. He doesn't punish. He removes. And that calm refusal to settle speaks louder than any argument or display of emotion. Having standards also means he holds himself accountable first. It's not just about how he lets others treat him. It's about the way he lives. He doesn't ask for honesty while lying to himself. He doesn't demand respect while being reckless with his own time, health, or energy. His standards are reflected in his daily choices, the kind of work he does, the kind of conversations he entertains, the quality of friendships he cultivates, and the integrity he maintains, even when no one is watching. Confidence may get attention, but standards build legacy. They shape the man over time. They draw the line between temporary wins and long-term fulfillment. In social dynamics, you can always spot the difference between a man who is confident and a man who also has standards. The confident man might dominate a conversation, joke loudly, or take control of a situation, but the man with standards will add something more: depth. He will listen with intent. He'll redirect a conversation that lacks value. He won't laugh at disrespectful jokes to blend in, nor will he allow drama to enter his space. He doesn't need to prove himself in every room, because he's already done that work internally. And that unshakable core, rooted in values and boundaries, gives him a quiet authority that outlasts surface-level charm. Let's take the example of dating apps or modern hookup culture. A confident man may match with many women, go on multiple dates, and feel validated by the attention. But a man with standards will screen for emotional intelligence, character, and alignment. He's not impressed by beauty alone. He asks real questions. He watches behavior, not just words. And if he senses that someone lacks depth, kindness, or consistency, he bows out, gracefully, but decisively. He's not afraid of being alone because his standards are not negotiable. His solitude is not a punishment. It's a choice that reflects his self-respect. Even in conflict, a man with standards handles things differently. He doesn't raise his voice to overpower or guilt someone into submission. He doesn't ghost or avoid difficult conversations. Instead, he communicates clearly, holds the boundary, and lets his actions follow through. If someone crosses a line once, he addresses it. If they do it again, he walks away. No drama, no second guessing, just clarity. This level of self-respect teaches others how to treat him without needing to constantly explain himself. And that in itself is one of the most attractive and rare qualities in a man. In friendships and business as well, standards set the tone. The man who demands loyalty, consistency, and respect in others is also the man who shows up with those values himself. He doesn't tolerate gossip, pettiness, or energy that distracts from his growth. His standards act as filters, allowing only aligned people into his life. He doesn't need to cut people off with ego. His consistency simply exposes those who aren't built to stay. And over time, his life becomes a reflection of his standards, not a chaotic blend of whoever shows up and whatever happens to be convenient. Standards are not about being rigid or overly perfectionistic. They're about alignment. They're about living in a way that honors your values, your peace, your vision, and your worth. Confidence is the voice. Standards are the foundation. One gets you noticed. The other makes you unforgettable. So if there's one thing to walk away with today, it's this. Real power doesn't come from how loud you speak, how charming you appear, or how many people admire you. It comes from the quiet decisions you make when no one's watching. It comes from the standards you hold, not just for others, but for yourself. When you stop seeking validation and start moving with intention, when you replace performance with principle, and when you stop settling for what's available and start aligning with what's deserved, that's when everything shifts. Women notice, the world notices, and more importantly, you notice, because you finally see yourself as the man you were always meant to become. So keep the confidence, but anchor it in something real, something rooted, something that can't be shaken. Because when your confidence is backed by standards, you don't just stand out, you stand firm,